Okay. We good to go? Good? All right. First of all, I wanted to take the opportunity to welcome everybody. Good to have you all stepping forward and helping out all of us, the residents of Pinellas County. And I look forward to the engagement. Looking forward to all the times that we get to agree to disagree and being civil about it and doing it the right way. And so with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started with the meeting. We have one little piece of business. There's one of our members who couldn't make it tonight but wants to participate virtually. We're not making a blanket statement about future virtual participation. We'll take that later. But for tonight, we want to go ahead and take a vote on allowing one of our members to participate virtually. And if we have any comments?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the virtual participation for this evening.
Thank you. I have a second. Do I have a second? I didn't hear the second. Okay, thank you.
I think Mike and I did at the same time. But
okay, apologize. Did you get that? Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So, where is our person? Are you going to bring them, let them in?
Commissioner, he does not have his camera on. He's only got a microphone showing in Zoom, and we've been unsuccessful to get him to respond. I'm not sure if he can hear us or not. He is in Zoom, but he has not responded to us yet.
Okay. Well,
Who is he? Who is he?
who is the gentleman?
It's Commissioner. It's CRC member Tom Steck. And
Steck?
yes, and we can go ahead and ask county staff to try to reach out to him by cell phone and see if we can get them on.
All right. Okay. Well, Tom, if you can hear us, they've allowed you to participate tonight. So, would love to see your smiling face on the screen if possible. If not, I understand, and you can participate either way. Okay. So. First up, I think it'd be good for each of us maybe just to get to know a little bit about each other. There was applications that were filled out, obviously, that had some background, but thought we'd just go around the room and start and just tell us a little bit about yourself and no set things and set time, but we'll start down there.
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Lindsay Grove. I was appointed public at large citizen appointee, and I'm a resident of St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm a nonprofit consultant, and I'm also a public health practitioner. So I'm really excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to getting to know everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My name is Ricky Butler. I am the Communications and Public Education Manager at the Sheriff's Office by day. By night, I just enjoy being involved in the community, different nonprofits over the years and things like that. So honored to be appointed by Commissioner Peters and look forward to this experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm Ashley Overen. I'm a legislative aide in the Florida Senate, a longtime legislative and political experience in Pinellas County and out of the state as well. Very thankful to have been appointed to this year's CRC by Commissioner Brian Scott, and look forward to the hard work that we have ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I am Anne Marie Brooks. I am the District 4 City Commissioner for Madeira Beach. I'm Florida born and raised. I've been in Pinellas County for over 20 years, in Madeira Beach for going on 9. I love my city, I love my county, and I love my state, and I am super excited to be a part of this.
Thank you. Mike.
Hi, everybody. Mike Twitty, Pinellas County Property Appraiser. Been in office for 6.5 years now, and before that, 26 years in the private sector as partner of a full-service residential and commercial appraisal firm working up and down the west coast of Florida. And happy to be here and participate in this process, and I'm representing all the constitutional officers as their appointee.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Doug Thomas, Executive Vice President with Strategic Government Resources. You're going to learn a little bit more about me and SGR a little later on the agenda, but we're here to assist you as your facilitator this year in this effort. So looking forward to working with you all.
Okay. Thank you. Todd.
Todd Jennings, I'm a resident of Bel Air, partner at McFarland, Ferguson, McMullen in Clearwater, and just looking forward to working with everyone.
Hello, everybody. Dr. Mark Strickland, Provost at St. Pete College. Been at the college for nearly 24 years, appointed by Commissioner Janet Long. I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Brian Ongst. I live in Clearwater. I'm an attorney here in Clearwater at McFarland Ferguson with Todd. I have a little bit of seniority on him, but that's okay. And I've served with many of you in other capacities over the years. And I look forward to meeting the rest of you and serving with you in this capacity, and was appointed by Commissioner Latvala. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Posovic. I live in Palm Harbor, Ozona specifically. By day, I am the Chief Financial Officer of a company called U.S. Wholesale Pipe and Tube. In Holiday, we're a steel distributor. But I've done a fair amount of volunteer work, mainly in the East Lake area with youth sports. Served as a fire commissioner back a few years ago, and then more recently, I was the chairperson at Palm Harbor Community Services Agency. I was appointed by Commissioner Eggers. Super excited about it, and looking forward to working with all of you. Thanks.
Greetings, I'm Terry Lipsey Scott, Executive Director of the Woodson African American Museum of Florida. I'm a retired city administrator from the city of St. Petersburg, and most recently served as the Vice Chair of the CRC for the city of St. Pete. I have been appointed by Commissioner Renee Flowers to serve in the capacity on this committee, and I'm excited about the opportunity this presents for us all. So thank you.
CRC members, good evening. My name's Wade Vose. I'm your general counsel. I can tell you a little bit about myself. I'm board certified in city, county, and local government law, and my firm, which is based in Winter Park, actually a little ways away from here, is city attorney for 10 cities, county attorney for 1 county throughout the state. Most relevant to my work for you all, I've served as general counsel to 7 different county charter review commissions in 5 different charter counties. Most relevant for you all, I was general counsel to the 2015-2016 Pinellas County Charter Review Commission. I also served in that role in Orange County in 2011, 2012, 2015-16, and now in 23-24. I also served in that role in 2017 and 18 in Clay County, 2016-15 in Brevard County, and 19 and 20 in Alachua County. So I look forward to putting that experience to work for you all.
Good evening, everybody. I'm State Senator Nick Desegler. I represent District 18, which is Gulf to Bay and South. I live in Indian Rocks Beach with my wife, Erica, and now 1 child. Our oldest just went off to college this weekend. I'm the Pinellas delegation appointee. That's my part-time job. They tell us it's part-time. I'm not so sure I believe it, but my day job, I am the proud president and CEO of Hope Villages of America, which is a great nonprofit in Clearwater. And looking very much forward to serving with all of you on this very important commission. So thank you.
Thank you. And my name is Dave Eggers. I'm a Pinellas County Commissioner, District 4, which is the north end of the county. I'm now serving 8+ years. This is my 9th year as County Commissioner. I've enjoyed it. Was in Dunedin as a mayor and commissioner there, and have a commercial real estate business. And so doing all of that keeps me busy. Married, have 2 kids, and a relatively new dog, so keeps us moving and happy and doing well. So again, thank you all for agreeing to be here and to be a part of this important work for Pinellas County and for our residents. With that said, I'm going to ask for any public comments. I'm not seeing anybody there, and since we don't have a way for people to participate virtually on that front, we have no public comment for tonight. Next order of business will be election of the chair and vice chair. So we will go ahead and, anything on that front, Mr. Attorney, or just that we should be aware of before we make our selection?
Nothing in particular. I did understand from staff that Mr. Steck, who was joining us by Zoom, had an interest in participating in that vote. So,
Mr.
yeah,
Steck has joined with a second instance, so you may want to attempt to contact him again.
very good. Yeah. So,
Say that, I didn't catch that. What,
is
is he online?
He is online.
Mr. Steck, can you hear us?
Tom?
His mic is muted.
Mike, if you could unmute your mic. Tom, can you hear? Was that you, Tom? No. What's that?
Yes, Commissioner, something he is doing is causing that feedback loop. I'm not sure if it's something on his end. Everything seems correct here.
I'm sorry. We're gonna have to. Can she speak from over there? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, the feedback came because we were trying to manually unmute him on the Zoom instance that we have open, and I tried to phone his cell phone, and it went to voicemail, so we're unable to communicate right now.
Commissioner, I wouldn't hold it up
What's
any
that?
longer. I would not hold it.
Okay.
Wouldn't suggest
All right.
holding it up any
All right.
longer if we're having problems. So, I would
Tom,
suggest
if you can hear us, we're going to move forward with the selection of our chair and vice chair. I'm hoping that you can participate in that discussion if we have any here shortly. And sorry that it hasn't worked out, if you can hear me. All right, I'm opening up to the floor of those who might be interested in serving as the Pinellas County Charter Review Chairman for this year.
I would like to nominate myself for chair. That's Lindsay Grove.
And say your name so we can pick it up.
Yep. I would like to nominate myself, Lindsay Grove, for chair of the Charter Review Commission for Pinellas County.
Okay. So we have one person. Anybody else interested in serving as chair?
Mr. Chair, I would be willing to serve as either chair or vice chair, but obviously for the purposes of this discussion, chair would be the first opportunity, so.
So we have two folks that are interested. Anybody else?
And member, could you
Commissioner?
state your name for
Yeah,
everyone?
sorry. Yeah.
Everyone doesn't know each other.
Yes, my
just
apologies.
yet.
This is Brian Ongst.
So we have two
Commissioner, I just have
nominees.
a clarifying question.
Yes.
Are you looking for a motion for anyone who has nominated themselves? Are we doing a ballot?
I'm imagining that we'll probably do a ballot. Yes, staff, do we have ballots? We don't have ballots. So we're not doing ballots. So we will, I will take a roll call here in just a minute. Okay? Anybody else interested in serving as chair? Okay. We'll start down with Lindsay.
I vote for myself for chair, Lindsay Grove.
And that's quite okay. It just, when we were in school, it always sounded funny when we did that, but it's totally appropriate here tonight, so thank you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Can we have them speak to their qualifications for this specific
Yes, that'd
role,
be fine.
if you don't mind?
That's why I was asking for any
If you
comments.
don't mind.
So
Thank you.
we'll hold the vote just for a minute, although we knew what you were going to vote, who you were going to vote for. But perhaps that's a good idea. Maybe you first. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and, you know.
Sure. So as public at large citizen appointee, I think that, I represent a wide swath of Pinellas County. I applied to be on the committee because I really, truly, strongly believe in participatory democracy, and that's really reflected in my work as president of League of Women Voters of the St. Petersburg area. During that time, I had to run a working board. I had to bring membership to consensus, and our membership was over 600 members at that time. So I have a pretty extensive working experience in board governance, especially doing nonprofit consulting, and have been an engaged citizen for as long as I've been here in Pinellas County, which has been over 13 years. And as a public health practitioner, I love working in systems. I actually do enjoy process and bureaucracy, so I'm really looking forward to being able to serve this particular commission and believe that my skill set really reflects well to be able to serve as chair.
Yeah, I'd prefer doing it that way, yes. Thank you. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm offering myself up to serve. I have had the honor of serving as the chairman of the inaugural County Commission Redistricting Committee, which completed its work just about a year and a half ago. It was the first ever commission of its kind, and we, I think, charted a very collaborative course that facilitated a lot of great discussion and great work product. So I view myself as a facilitator, someone that is good at building consensus and relationships, making sure that all viewpoints are heard. I've also served as chairman of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, continue to serve on that commission, and I've served as the chairperson of the Judicial Nominating Commission for the Sixth Circuit with over 20 judicial appointments and recommendations being made. I am an attorney of 15 years who has a working knowledge of the charter of the Pinellas County Limited Charter Government. I've worked with Mr. Vos and county staff in this role in the past as the redistricting committee chairman, and that's simply why I'm offering myself for service. I have no agenda other than a great work product and a collaborative process that's transparent, accountable, and something that I think all the citizens will be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you stepping up. And do you mind if we go ahead and do? I mean, since you voted vocally, okay. We're going to go ahead and vote, and make sure you sign your name at the bottom of your vote. Okay.
Yes, to the commissioner's point, as he mentioned, please, and actually go ahead and write out in long form your name on it. You can put it up in the corner or something and put the name you're voting for right in the center, if that would work for you. It's just a little requirement of the Sunshine Law that if we're having written votes, we need to know who's voting for what.
I just want to let you know that Tom is raising his hand in Zoom. He's still having issues technically with his communications.
Okay. Well, we're trying. We've tried. Okay, Brian? Yes, sir. No, I'm sorry. The other Brian Lowak. Can you collect these and? Only one vote per person. I'm kidding. I'm teasing.
This is just chair ballot.
Yes. We'll do the other in just a second. You could count those, please, and then we'll move on.
We will do our best and get right to you, Commissioner.
And my last function as the chairperson will be just to run the vice chair vote, and then I'll turn it over to the new chair. And whoever that is, I'd like to switch spots with you. Okay? Can't get through. Well, I don't know what to do about it. Tom, can you hear us and can you participate? Go ahead. Go ahead with the announcing the vote, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. With 9 votes, CRC member Alex has been elected chair. With
Thank you all. I appreciate the confidence, and I promise we'll have a great process. Look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Sure. I would love to run for vice chair. Yep.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve Dr. Grove as vice chair.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all again, and I won't belabor the point, but I take this solemn responsibility very seriously, and I pride our county on its ability to work together and to be inclusive and to be transparent and accountable, and that's something that I know that we're all pledged to do here as public servants, as uncompensated public servants, but public servants nonetheless. And so I thank you for your trust, and I thank Dr. Grove for your service as vice chair, and look forward to working with you on this long process until July of 2024 is when we have to report to the county commission and to the voters. So I will turn it over now to our able counsel, Mr. Vos, to lead us in agenda item 6, purpose of the commission.
Thank you very much, Chairman. CRC members, good evening. I'm going to be covering a couple different agenda items here, so I would ask the county staff to go ahead and put up the very short PowerPoint that I just sent you recently. We're going to be discussing a little bit the purpose of the Charter Review Commission. Not going to be doing it in the most interesting way. Quite frankly, in the course of your work over the next many months, you're going to really be fleshing out in your own mind what is the purpose of this Charter Review Commission. We're just going to start with some of the basics, the text of why it is you're here and what brought you here. So where did they put it up here? Okay. So Charter Review Commission is, of course, created by a portion of the Pinellas County Charter. And there's a requirement that every 8 years, the Board of County Commissioners appoint a Charter Review Commission of 13 members with, I will tell you, a rather unique composition. There are 20 charter counties in the state of Florida. I'm going to be referencing them a lot as we have discussions. Pinellas County, of course, is very unique, and its charter is no different. Its requirements for its membership, a little bit different. Almost every other charter county requires that you not have any elected officials or any other, connection to a lot of different interests and what have you. Pinellas County is different for very good historical reasons. There are actually requirements that you have a member of the legislative delegation, one of the 5 constitutional officers, one elected city official, member of the Board of County Commissioners, and then 7 members chosen by each county commissioner, and then 2 at large. And so you all have been through that part of the process, and here we are. The highlighted portions really get down to what it is you all are going to be doing. First off, we are here, that subsection B up there, that bolded sentence, we are here for your organizational meeting. So we're going to be doing a lot of boring stuff tonight. We're going to be going over the Sunshine Law and the Public Records Act, and you all have done very important organizational matter in choosing your chair and vice chair, and then we're going to be figuring out your schedule to do your work over the next many, many months. The core of what it is you all are going to be doing is set out in subsection D of section 6.03, and that is the Charter Review Commission shall review on behalf of the citizens of Pinellas County the operation of county government in order to recommend amendments to this charter, if any. I want you to just keep that in mind. The product that comes out of a county charter review commission in the end is going to be, we'll see, a final report. But what's the gravamen of that final report? It's going to be 1 or more proposed amendments to the charter, all right? The way those work, and I know I'm speaking to the choir with a lot of folks who've dealt with it before and so on, but the way that works is going to be those proposed amendments are going to be included in that final report, which, as your chair mentioned, is going to have to be submitted by July 31st, 2016, and I would suggest to you it probably should be before that date for practical reasons. We'll discuss that. But what it's going to be boiled down to is 1 or more charter amendments, 1 or more questions that are going to be put on the ballot. Why? The only way you can amend a county charter in Florida is to have it approved by a vote of the electors, all right? So anything you all do as a suggested change to the charter, the end product is going to be a question that goes on the ballot for the voters to vote on. And then if that particular question is approved by a majority of the electors voting in that election on that amendment will become part of the charter. One procedural matter to keep in mind is as we get toward the end of the process, and I will tell you just from a little bit of experience, both around the state and the last time around in 2015-16, we may not get to the point when you're scheduling all your meetings to the point where you're figuring out exactly when your hearings are going to be all the way at the end. Frankly, you may pick up the pace as you get towards the end, or you may slow down depending on the amount of work you've gotten done, where you are, and so on. But if you are going to put any charter amendments on the ballot, there's going to be a requirement that you all hold at least 2 public hearings on those proposed amendments or revisions. There's a very particular time interval set up, not less than 10 days, not more than 21 days immediately prior to the transmittal of those recommendations, i.e. the transmittal of that final report. So as we get closer and as we look at when you're going to be getting done with your work, we're going to need to back into those dates to figure out what we're going to be doing. Again, it's a very dry thought of what your purpose is. Reviewing the operation of government to recommend amendments to the charter. But as you'll see, as folks start throwing around different ideas, you see what you have in other county charters throughout the state and other ideas that may be coming around, you will find county charters are incredibly powerful documents, okay? They have or can have a whole lot of power over the entire structure of county government. Over the power relationships between the county and municipalities. It used to be that it had a lot of control over the power relationships between the county and the constitutional officers. However, I will tell you, and this will be a fair change from the last time everything went around, there was an amendment to the Florida Constitution since your last Charter Review Commission back in 2018 when Amendment 10 was passed. Yeah. That basically changed the power. It used to be that county charters had the authority to abolish the constitutional offices and transfer all their powers to another office, i.e. a county office. That power was taken away in an amendment to the Florida Constitution. Nevertheless, county charters have a whole lot of power that we'll be discussing over the next many months. And next, we're going to go ahead and move on to, again, something that's probably going to be very boring and rote for a number of you. But we're going to be doing a very brief overview of two things that are very important in your work as members of the Charter Review Commission, and that is reviewing the Sunshine Law and the Public Records Act. Let me ask you all first. Raise your hand if you have served on a board that's subject to the Sunshine Law. Okay, good. We're going to be real easy, real quick here. Nevertheless, as you all know, and as our county commissioner knows, elected members of governing bodies like county commissions or city councils and so on are required to take a 4-hour Sunshine Law, public records, and ethics class every single year on these topics. So we're not doing the 4 hours tonight by any stretch. But I'm going to hit just some of the basics very quickly. But again, please do not hesitate to stop and ask me any questions. It is all fun and games with the Sunshine Law until somebody gets a call from an investigator at the state attorney's office, and that just ruins your entire year, okay? We don't want to get within 10 miles of any of that. There's no need to, particularly when we're dealing with important work for the CRC. So we're going to go ahead, as I mentioned, cover two topics very quickly. First, governing the Sunshine or the Open Meetings Law, and we'll move on very quickly to the Public Records Act, which is actually going to be made very simple for you all, in great part as members of the CRC. And if I drift from the mic too much, please tell me. Ordinarily, I have a free mic and I walk around when I do this. So, what is the Sunshine Law? Basic idea is it provides a right of access to governmental proceedings. It applies, it's very important in the context of you all, to both elected and appointed boards. All right, applies to appointed boards just as much as to elected. The general rule of the Sunshine Law is that all meetings at which official acts are taken or public business is transacted or discussed have to be open and noticed to the public. So let's break that down into its elements, its particulars. The Sunshine Law applies to any meeting. Now, what do I mean by a meeting? All right. Meeting is all those different things down there. And some of them are what we might call good meetings, and some are what we might call bad meetings, all right? They're bad meetings because there's no way they can comply with all the requirements of the Sunshine Law I'm about to tell you about. So everything that would be a meeting under the Sunshine Law, CRC meetings, city commission meetings, county commission meetings, or workshops. Just so you all know, when folks use that term workshop, all right, it's usually just a term that a board may use to convey to the public, hey, we're going to be talking about some particular issue. We may not be taking any final action on it, and we may be a little bit less formal and spitball some ideas around. For the purposes of the Sunshine Law, it is nevertheless a meeting and has to comply with all the requirements, okay? In addition, there are other meetings that can't comply with the Sunshine Law. Telephone calls or text messages, emails or other written correspondence or informal discussions or deliberations. Between who? This is the key part. Move down to that second element here. Sunshine Law applies to any meeting between two or more members of the same board. All right? So I get this question all the time in a lot of the cities and the one county that I'm city or county attorney for. Say, hey, I'm on the planning board. I'm not allowed to talk to the city council member about X, right? Or Y, right? Because this comes before us and then them. No. There is no prohibition under the Sunshine Law for members of different government bodies talking to each other. Now, we're going to run into an issue in just a minute here about what we call a conduit, all right? Not allowed to do in the law indirectly, which can't do directly. Can't use a go-between to have a Sunshine Law violation. But what we're talking about here is two different boards, and so I'll give you an example. If it came to be you all are discussing a charter amendment issue, pretty hot issue, what have you, then it is perfectly legal if you wanted to talk to one of the county commissioners. This is true for everybody except one of our members, because he's also a county commissioner. I would suggest not talking to other county commissioners about CRC business. But for everybody else who's not also a county commissioner, it is perfectly permissible under the Sunshine Law to have a conversation with a county commissioner about what their thoughts are about this. No sunshine issue whatsoever, all right? Now, third element for the Sunshine Law. Applies to any meeting between two or members of the same board when discussing matters that may foreseeably come before that board, okay? So what does this mean? It means if you run into each other in the Publix, you do not need to go run screaming the other direction, okay? It's perfectly fine to talk about the weather. You can talk about the Florida Gators, all right? You can talk about national politics, talk about state politics generally. I would suggest, just on the side of caution, because of the broad scope and authority of the Charter Review Commission in proposing amendments to the fundamental structure of county government, I'd probably suggest just staying away from discussions among two or more members of the CRC matters concerning Pinellas County government, even in a general sense. If we were, put to the sword on it, we could get a little bit more specific, but I'd probably suggest just stay that way and you'll be in a good spot. So, why do we call them? We had those different meetings there. I called some of those bad meetings, telephone calls, text messages, emails, or informal discussions or deliberations between two or more members of the same board about matter that may foreseeably come before that board. Because it's not going to be able to meet these three basic requirements. The nice thing about the Sunshine Law is if you have all your discussions in a nice set-up meeting, all handled by staff and all of this, it's going to comply with all this and you're going to be great. All right, you're not going to have any problems. Three basic requirements. First, meetings of public boards or commissions must be open to the public. We are open to the public here. Anybody can come on in and sit down and listen to anything and everything you all are saying. Reasonable notice of meetings have to be given. Again, this is handled by county staff, so you don't need to worry about any of those issues. Just as an aside, each county and city tends to have their own internal policies as to what they consider reasonable notice in an ordinary circumstance. I go around the state all the time and they say, oh, state law is 14 days, right? Wait, it's 7 days, right? No, it's one of these lawyer words. It's reasonable, all right? Nevertheless, county staff is going to be complying with what is the county standard for giving notice for other county meetings with regard to satisfying that requirement, and we're going to be in a good spot. Third requirement is that minutes of the meetings have to be taken, promptly recorded, and open to public inspection. Again, being handled by staff. So if you come, participate in these meetings here, and this is the place where you're having these discussions, we're good to go. We're complying with the Sunshine Law. Just something to keep in mind, you all have heard of an advisory board, boards that are usually they're appointed boards that just come up with something advisory, a recommendation to some other body, say like the Board of County Commissioners and so on. You all are not an advisory board, all right? The decisions the Pinellas County Charter Review Commission make to place charter amendments on the ballot, those are final decisions, okay? It goes for a ministerial action of the Board of County Commissioners to take the ministerial action to put it on the ballot, but the final legal action is the issuance of your report saying these are the questions that are going on the ballot, okay? In any event, it's just a thing to keep in mind if you ever do hear about it. Even boards whose job is only to give recommendations, not taking the final action, they are also still subject to the Sunshine Law just as much as any other. So like I mentioned, there's an old principle in the law, you can't do indirectly what you're not allowed to do directly. And so we can't use individuals to be a liaison or go-between or what we call conduit between two members of the CRC. So a member of the CRC can't go to some mutual friend and say, hey, go tell CRC member such and such, if they support my proposal for this, then I'll support proposal for that. This is just as problematic as going up and having that discussion directly. So don't do it indirectly if you can't do it directly. And as we talk about, meetings have to be open to the public. Again, these are matters that are all handled by staff. Requirements are basically location has to be accessible, adequate size, not discriminate or restrict access to the public. If we get to a situation where we're filling up whole rooms or anticipate much more than filling up this room, that's a matter we'll deal with as it comes. It's generally incumbent upon the government to figure out a reasonable way to accommodate all those who would want to come to the meeting, but those are the types of things you deal with as they come. One thing to keep in mind, and I actually ordinarily around the state tell a story from Pinellas County about this. Sunshine Law actually requires that if folks come in and they want to take photographs or videotape or tape record, not tape record anymore, you know, electronically record or what have you, meeting, then they are entitled to do under the Sunshine Law. Last time around in 2015-16, I walked in at the, one of the other county facilities where there's a lot of gardens around everywhere. It escapes me right now. Botanical Gardens, yes. Yep. So I walked in there that time for a Charter Review Commission meeting, and man, all sorts of video equipment was getting set up. And I asked county staff, "Oh, is that you know, county video staff for this and that?" And they said, "Oh no, it's a public group. They record all this and they stream it on the internet." That was innovative back in 2015-16. Not everybody had 4K video cameras in their pocket back then. But in any event, if we have folks in here videotaping, they're perfectly permitted to do so. One last requirement, I still think of it as a new section, it's 10 years ago now, but the legislature has added a fourth requirement of the Sunshine Law. It's one that you all already have built into your rules, or pardon me, already have built into your agenda, and I would suggest you are going to be integrated into your practice, and that is providing the public a reasonable opportunity to be heard on a proposition that comes before the CRC. So the requirements are actually not incredibly strict. I usually recommend a little bit more public comment than the minimum statutory requirements. It does not restrict the chairman from maintaining, the chair or the board, depending on how things end up, from maintaining orderly conduct or proper decorum. So if folks get up and they are violent, disruptive, or anything like that, that does not override the right to be able to maintain decorum. So we're able to establish matters such as time limits, procedures for folks to fill out cards with their name and so on, designating certain periods of time during the agenda for public comment and so on. Now, why do we comply with the Sunshine Law? Obviously, we want to follow the law, but there are also penalties, both for the individuals who violate the Sunshine Law and for the government, in particular here, the CRC. So first, for an individual who knowingly violates the Sunshine Law, they're guilty of a misdemeanor in the second degree, all right? And I've literally heard people around the state before say, "Oh, misdemeanor in second degree, that's not much." Like I said, it's all fun and games till you get a call from an investigator at the state attorney's office, and even if there is nothing to it, it's a big mess. So don't go anywhere near it. Even an unintentional violation can be prosecuted as a non-criminal infraction. Now, moving on to the effect for the government, Sunshine Law provides that no resolution, rule, regulation, or formal action shall be considered binding except as taken and made at an open meeting. That sounds reasonable, right? But the Florida Supreme Court back in the 70s, they kind of took that and ran with it and came to the conclusion that basically if someone can allege and prove a Sunshine Law violation sometime in the decision-making process in some decision, they can go into court and try to get that decision found void ab initio, that is, void from the beginning, all right? So why is this important? It is one of the most common lines of attack if somebody really doesn't like some decision a board makes, is to try to find some evidence that there was a sunshine law violation somewhere in the process as a way to collaterally attack that decision, okay? So what I always tell people is if any decision is important enough that they would feel compelled, that they think they need to whisper in corners about it, it's important enough to not do that, because all you're doing is giving somebody who might oppose that decision an opportunity to attack it. Of course, lawyers being lawyers, we've come up with ways to try to cure that, but it does not always work. So best thing to do, stay on the right side of the sunshine law, and we'll be great. Any questions about the sunshine law?
Anybody have any questions for Attorney Bose, either about the Sunshine Law, Public Records Act, or the purpose of the commission under the charter? Now would be the time to ask those questions.
I'm going to be very brief on the Public Records Act.
Okay. Any questions about Sunshine Law or the charter? Okay. Mr. Bose, please continue.
So, very short version of the Public Records Act, again, because as a practical matter, I think we've got it, county staff has it sorted out for you to make things nice and easy on this. Public Records Act provides a right of access to records of state and local governments, okay? Comes from the Florida Constitution just like the Sunshine Law does. Got to start out understanding what is a public record, all right? It's pretty broad. All documents, papers, letters, maps, books, tapes, photographs, films, sound recordings, data processing software. This is the 1970s legislature trying to imagine the future, okay? Or other material, regardless of the physical form, characteristics, or means of transmission, made or received pursuant to law or ordinance or in connection with the transaction of official business by any agency. Now, here's interesting little tidbit. See that word at the end there, agency? You look in the statutory definition, you want to know something interesting? So the county is an agency under the Public Records Act, all right? I'd suggest to you probably the Pinellas County Charter Review Commission itself is an agency. Each one of you is also an agency. It's a very weirdly drafted definition. It goes down to individuals as well, okay? So there is some individual responsibility for anyone who is subject to the Public Records Act. And so what are we really talking about here? We're talking about materials made or received by an agency in connection with official business which are used to perpetuate, communicate, or formalize knowledge. And when we don't have the practical facilities I'm about to tell you about, I go into a lot more detail and try to dispel a lot of concerns and so on, but the nice and easy thing the county has provided for you all is CRC email addresses, all right? County government lives and breathes by email nowadays. I actually practice law with my mother. She's been practicing local government law for 50 years now. I ask her all the time how she got government work done before email. She can't even remember. But everything is done by email now, okay? So you're going to be receiving all of your information concerning CRC matters by email. You're going to be receiving emails from the public about hot topics by email, okay? Because, and if you all use your CRC email addresses to keep your CRC materials concerning that, the county is going to be handling the most important parts of the Public Records Act for you, which is the obligation to retain and produce those records when someone asks for them, okay? So if you're sending or receiving emails concerning CRC business and you're doing it through your CRC email, you're pretty much covered on the Public Records Act, all right? Edge cases, like you get an actual handwritten letter in the mail about a CRC matter, my suggestion would be bring that on in, and you're welcome to give that to county staff so that the county has it and you don't have to worry about holding on to it anymore, okay? The one last thing I will note to you about is notes. So some folks are note takers. They're big note takers. They'll do big pages and pages of handwritten notes. I'll give you a little bit of caution about that, okay? When you end up doing pages and pages of handwritten notes, take the risk if anybody comes and asks, hey, I want to see CRC member so-and-so's notes on this. Most people, it might be none, right? But if you take voluminous notes, I would offer to you that those are going to come under this Florida Supreme Court definition because it's probably going to tick one of the three boxes: perpetuate, communicate, or formalize knowledge. Most people say, oh, well, I wrote this stuff down, but I never shared it with anybody. Well, it's only one of those three. That's communicate. The other two can trigger it as well. The big exception to this on notes is folks like me now in my starting to be advanced years need to write stuff down to remember that you're going to say this or that, all right? So if you just jot down a couple things, dash this, dash that, all right? The case law and the Attorney General's office have recognized that little notes to yourself, just to jog your memory when you're coming into a meeting to know you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and what have you, that those do not meet the Florida Supreme Court definition of what a public record is in the first place, and so those are not public records, all right? So little notes to yourself, okay. Big, long-form treatises analyzing this, that, and the other thing, doesn't mean we're going to be publishing them on the website the next day, but keep in mind, if somebody comes and asks the right question, they might be entitled to get a copy. Chairman, that's all I have, and I'm glad to answer any questions on that as well, if there are any.
Thank you, Attorney Vose. Any questions for Attorney Vose at this time? Okay, I think we are ready to consider the rules of the commission.
Outstanding.
Chair?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Commissioner.
real quick, and I may have missed it, but did you mention texting?
Great question. Yeah, I was trying to be, I'm going to address two things on that. Thank you for bringing it up. So first off, texts relating to CRC business are generally public records, okay? So whether we're looking at emails, looking at texts, or what have you, my strong suggestion would simply be don't text concerning CRC business, okay? Best thing to do is stay far away from that. One other thing I do want to mention, because it does end up coming up from time to time, and this has both Sunshine Law and public records implications. Again, this is when I get into my 4-hour, we get deep into all these things, but I'll just give you the very brief version. Facebook, okay? Facebook is not your friend from a Sunshine Law or public record standpoint. If you post, if you make posts on Facebook concerning your CRC business, okay, I would suggest to you that that post could be found to be CRC business and thus subject to the Public Records Act. What's the problem with that? Our obligations when you have a public record are to retain it and make it available for inspection and copying. Unfortunately, Facebook is just not set up very well to allow individuals to do those things, okay? In addition, if you get into Facebook discussions or debates or what have you, perfectly fine generally. We have First Amendment. You all have First Amendment rights still, except you can't get into discussions with other CRC members concerning CRC business on a Facebook thread or emails back and forth or by any means, okay? So if you happen to be Facebook friends with another member of the CRC, that is not illegal. And it does happen to be that a fellow CRC member mentions something about CRC business, I would urge you in the strongest terms, do not respond to it, okay? Because if somebody just posts about it, got a public records issue, it's not a violation of anything, it's just a pain to retain. But if somebody responds, now we have a back and forth, okay? Now we have what looks like a discussion outside of a noticed public meeting, and we want to try to avoid that. Commissioner, does that help along those lines?
Any other questions for Attorney Vose? Okay.
And members, we have before you some proposed CRC operating rules. They are they're brief and they are sparse and they are based first on the operating rules that were adopted in the 2015-2016 Charter Review Commission process. And then actually, I can tell you from actual experience because I was involved in representing the County Redistricting Board as well. The 2015-16 operating rules served as a base for the Redistricting Board rules as well. In that case, made some revisions, cleanups, tune-ups to that language, and so on. And then those tune-ups and cleanups were kind of backed into this version here as a new proposed 2023-2024 set of operating rules. And so again, it's not meant to be comprehensive, but just meant to deal with some practical matters. So first off, just that members of the public would sign sign-in sheets and appearance cards so that county staff can have documentation of who it is who had spoken, along with their stating their names. Some basic requirements for public comments, that public comment be taken at the beginning of the meeting and for each agenda item. That there be 3-minute time limit for the speaker unless the chairman determines shorter time is warranted because there are a whole bunch of folks there. And that an action that would impact an amendment to the charter be taken on an item that's not listed on the agenda, vote on the action would be tabled to a subsequent meeting, okay? This is in the interest of making sure the public, when big items are going to be coming up, that they have some advance notice that big decisions might be made, and so on. CRC vote requirements. As generally, approval by a simple majority, majority of those members present, sufficient to move an issue forward at the time an issue is discussed. Issue initially voted down at a CRC meeting will be reconsidered following Robert's rules on reconsideration. So basically, if something gets teed up to the point where you have an issue, you've discussed it, and it's you're at the point where you're going to advance it for further evaluation and so on, and it's affirmatively or permitted that fails at that time, then we'd follow Robert's rules on reconsideration to bring that back up if it was the interest of members to do so. Finally, a requirement of an affirmative vote of a majority of the full membership required for final approval of the final report. What this is basically saying is they didn't want to get into a situation where if it came to be, and I wouldn't anticipate this actually happening, but come to the final meeting where final report's being approved and you only have 9 members of 13 there, and then you end up with kind of a rump CRC approving a final report. It's looking at getting a majority of the total CRC to approve. Requirement that the clerk record votes, which is standard. What was done last time around, that approval for expenses, the review and approval of that would be delegated to the chairman. And then finally, for virtual attendance, and I assure you, we will make sure we've got that technology working appropriately in the future if we go forward with this. This is a long piece here. This is based on guidance from the Attorney General's office, okay? For instances where virtual attendance by telephone or Zoom by individual members would be permissible under governing laws, okay? You're not required to have permission for this, but if permission is granted, this is these are the parameters. And the parameters would be you have a quorum physically present in the room, that members can only attend virtually or electronically under extraordinary circumstances, and those examples are illness, public health concern, pandemic or public health concerns. That was not in 2015-16. That was added. Unavoidable business-related absence, absence of state legislator when legislature is in session. That was actually relevant last time around in 2015-16 when the state representative had to be in Tallahassee, and so set it up so he could participate. The existence of other extraordinary circumstances be determined by commission vote at the beginning of the meeting. Generally, this list here is presumed to be extraordinary circumstances. If something other than that comes up, you would vote on that at that time. And they can participate fully in it. And obviously, extraordinary circumstances does not mean for convenience, like you didn't want to do the drive to get here or anything like that. Are there any questions about these proposed rules? And of course, as the process goes on, these can be changed, revised, what have you, but it's always good to have a starting place.
Commissioner Eggers, yes, sir.
Yeah, just real quick, I'm assuming Robert's Rules of Orders say that in C1, where you're voting to move an item forward, that a quorum must be present.
If you could scroll up a little bit.
C1, yeah. It just says that a majority of those present shall be, I'm assuming that means there's a quorum first.
That's right. And actually, thank you very much. You're exactly right. And these rules, just so you know, are meant to be additional to the couple rules that are set out in the chart. One of them is that a quorum be present, and that a quorum is a majority of your entire membership. So you're exactly right.
So 7 must be here.
That's correct.
To move an item forward.
And then
7 must be voting affirmatively to move it onto as a recommendation.
So let's talk about that. Yeah, what we're talking about here is a majority of members present. So we're talking about a simple majority. You have a quorum in the room, okay? So you have 7 in the room, and and 4 of them vote to move something forward. That is sufficient, okay? It is not sufficient to approve. It's not sufficient to approve the final report, okay?
The one that would go on to
ballot.
Yeah, at the ballot.
Yeah.
Must be 7 votes.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Very good points of clarification. Thank you. Any other questions for Attorney Vos on the proposed operating rules? Yes, thank you. Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. If you can scroll up, please, with regards to attendance. I'm sorry, the other direction. We took action today regarding virtual attendance, and it made reference here in this outline that there should be justification for us having taken that vote. What justification was provided for us to take the action we took with regards to the participation of the individual participating virtually?
Sure, thank you very much for that. And we had addressed that kind of quickly because we wanted to get into the entire matter of everything. The CRC member had communicated to staff that he had an unavoidable prearranged business meeting in Orlando that he could not get out of. So it's unavoidable business-related absence is what this one fell under.
Information be provided in the future prior to us taking such action?
Yes, ma'am. I think what we'll go ahead and do if these rules are adopted is anyone utilizing this for the enumerated reasons there, we would just go ahead and state for the record, so-and-so has advised staff of X, Y, what have you. If it's another extraordinary or proposed extraordinary circumstances that's not one of these 1 through 4 enumerated one, then we would say, we received this other reason, and we would ask the board to consider whether or not to allow.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the rules as presented by Attorney Vos.
We have a motion to approve the operating rules, and there's a second by Proper Appraiser Twitty. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Vos.
Thank you all very much.
All right, we will move on to selection of a facilitator. We have Mr. Douglas. Doug Thomas, Mr. Thomas, my apologies, with Strategic Government Resources Incorporated, and we have a proposed agreement that was in your packet that was subject to an RFP earlier this year, and my assumption is that this agreement and the RFP process, this is a product of that RFP process. So, Mr. Thomas, please proceed.
Thank you. And if I could have the man behind the curtain bring up the PowerPoint. As that's taking place, it's my pleasure to be here this evening and be part of a very important process for your community as you're going forward. if we can get, if we're, oh, there we go. Okay, super, it's up. So I was asked as part of the RFP process, we were encouraged to consider submitting a proposal for Pinellas County to serve as your facilitator. And so we went through that process, and I'll kind of walk you through what that looks and feels like so you kind of understand how we got to where we are, how we think this process will go forward, but also talk a little bit about what we think will be the milestone events that will take place as you're going through this effort. So first and foremost, I want to introduce you to the firm of Strategic Government Resources, or SGR as I'll refer to it throughout the effort, throughout our time here. We go back to 1999. The firm is based in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area in Keller, Texas, although we have virtual offices all over the country, and I'm here based in Florida as well. As you can see, our philosophy is really we're involved in recruiting, assessing, and developing innovative and collaborative authentic leaders with local governments across the country. We really are recognized as one of the thought leaders in local government operations. I've identified our core values. We really focus on the intentions of integrity and philanthropy and continuous improvement, flexibility, the golden rule, collaboration, and protecting our relationships. We are a full-service local government firm. We do virtually everything. We stay out of the legal arenas. We let the general counsels handle that. We stay out of the engineering arenas, but virtually everything else we touch in some way, shape, or form. We're one of the largest public sector executive recruitment firms in the country. We do an incredible amount of work in strategic planning, strategic visioning, and in strategic foresight. That's an important element for us to talk about this evening as well, and in collaboration with a group called the Alliance for Innovation. We do a lot of instruction and servant leadership. We do train a number of folks either remotely or on site, close to 1,000 government employees in a course of a month in terms of any number of soup to nuts types of trainings. We also are involved in placing interim managers and department heads and city managers and county managers, things of that nature. And we also place individuals, some smaller communities only need an HR director 2 or 3 days a week, and we're able to place folks that are trained in that arena through our operations. We also hold our own state and national conferences and events, and as you'll see later, the principal of the firm, Ron Holifield, who's a former city manager as I am, are pretty active speakers on state and national scenes in terms of best management practices and trends and issues that are taking place in local government. I want to just highlight the fact that we are, although we are based in Texas, we have virtual offices literally across the country. As you can see, the chart behind you, or before you, depending on which way you're looking, those in green represent various active or previous recruitment activities that we've been involved with across the country. But between that and all of other activities that we're involved with training and program and retreats and things of that nature, we have close to 700 local government clients in almost all 50 states at this stage. Locally, since we are here based in Florida, I wanted to give you a sense that we're very much actively involved, largely through my presence as a former city manager here in the state of Florida. We have a very robust partnership with our state association, the Florida City County Management Association. So we actually provide what is referred to as MITs, or Managers in Transition. We have an actual support program for those individuals that are members of the FCCMA. We're also a regular conference attendee and presenter and engager of various discussions and panels and moderators. I'm regularly speaking at state and national conferences here. And then I also serve as a member of the membership committee for FCCMA. So we're very much in touch with kind of what's happening across the state as well as across the country. We're also very much involved as a former city manager, and now on the other side of the table working in a consulting arena. We've got a relationship with Business Watch as a corporate member. We also serve as one of their representatives to the Florida League of Cities, one of their standing policy committee meetings that goes throughout the year as well. And then above and beyond that, we also are advancing local government operations through the Center for Florida Local Government Excellence. It's a program set up by the FCCMA, the Florida League of Cities, and I believe FAC is involved. We're one of 3 corporate sponsors in that program and a fairly regular presenter and speaker at those programs as well. So we're pretty much invested not just across the country, but very much here in the state of Florida as well. I want to talk next about something that may be of interest to this group. When we were asked to consider this, one of the reasons we were suggested to consider supplying a proposal is because of our national presence, but also above and beyond that, as I mentioned, we're recognized as a leading thought provocateur, if you will, with regards to local government operations across the country. We started that by developing a strategic foresight program, which is a membership-driven program where individuals and cities and counties joined, and we actually engaged several strategic foresight, or futurists, if you will, that were part of SGR staff. That later came into a program where, you may recall this from your city management years or city administration years. There was a group called the Alliance for Innovation. It was formed by the International City County Management Association. That kind of fell off into a disrepair. It was an organization that was really developed to encourage communities to pursue leading edge and just futuristic approaches to local government operations. And so as we were starting our strategic foresight program, AFI came to us and also asked us to perhaps run their operations. So we went through a whole process of shaking out all those trees, and at the end of the day, we actually created a nonprofit group. So AFI is now in partnership with Strategic Government Resources, and that runs part of our future outreach efforts. And we hold a variety of national conferences. We've held 3 of them. The next one will be actually here in Tampa in April of next year. And as you can see from this slide, we have close to 130 cities that are part of that AFI membership. They range from very small communities of 4,100 up to over 1.6 million in Pinellas County, and some of the other communities that you see here in Florida are there. So these are, I raise that in the sense that because our efforts, because of that, as you consider what you may be doing in this task and looking at your county operations and what your future charter programs may be, we have a natural relationship with people and organizations and communities and thought leaders and speakers literally across the country that we can help you say, okay, if you're interested in this type of topic, we can very quickly reach out to folks that are part of that AFI membership or through other contexts that we have in their organization through SGR. So that's something that I think we can bring to the table beyond just facilitating your process, your efforts here. So I want to introduce the team. As I mentioned, my name is Doug Thomas. I serve as the Executive Vice President. I will be your project lead and facilitator. But we've got some other folks that will be backing me up, that will be supporting me, or if I get hit by a bus or something of that nature, we've always got someone that can carry on the effort. My background is in city management, about 35 years in both Maryland, Michigan, and here in Florida, ranging from smaller communities when I first started in this business, as small as 1,200 when I literally came out of grad school, to the last city that I was city manager for about 12 years was the city of Lakeland over in Polk County. So I'm not that far from you at this point. I always say I'm the best commercial for SGR because I hired SGR to assist us in some recruitment activities. And at the end of the day, the principal of the firm, Ron Holifield, convinced me to consider entering a second chapter of my career earlier than I thought I was going to, and actually brought me on board. And so I have now been with SGR on a full-time basis for about 8 years. And I split my time between executive recruitment, doing these types of activities, strategic planning, council governance retreats, strategic visioning processes, council manager relationships, and the third, and special projects. And then the third element is typically speaking at state and national conferences about best management practices and trends that are taking place. So I will be your representative. I am from Florida. I've been here since 2003, kind of understand the culture and certainly understand the relationships that counties and cities have here in the state of Florida. I want to highlight just a few other members that are part of our team. Ron Holifield is the founder and CEO of our organization. Ron will be available to us as a resource beyond my natural contacts and efforts and through AFI. Ron has a wealth of information and contacts through his speaking engagements and otherwise, so there's probably not a topic that you will not think about that one of us haven't touched in some way, shape, or form through our efforts with SGR. So I wanted to identify that Ron's certainly available as an additional resource to identify those speakers as need be. The other person I wanted to certainly highlight to you is Heather Benoit. Heather was our futurist that we first brought on board, one of two that we had. And as you can see for her background, she basically comes out of the private sector component, and she has studied and excelled in the area of strategic foresight. And she leads our AFI program with a variety of other folks. So she's also out there doing research and trends and analysis about future trends and efforts that our AFI partners are interested in learning about. And we're getting that constant feedback between those contributors at the local level in service to what we're doing in research and adding that. So Heather's certainly available to us as a researcher, or if there's a topic that perhaps we've done analysis or background work for AFI, she may be a speaker for a topic that you might be interested in hearing about here as you're considering options. And lastly, as part of a backup to me largely in the event that I'm not able to make a meeting, I'm certainly hopeful that I will be at all your meetings, but I wanted to introduce you to Hillary Shine. Hillary brings about 20 years of local government experience in the city of Killeen, Texas. She has joined us back in 2022, leads a lot of facilitative governance, council manager relationships, and strategic planning type sessions as well. So for the most part, you won't see many of these folks unless perhaps we're bringing them in for special purposes, but I wanted to at least be aware of who else was involved with SGR. Wade brought up a background in terms of the timeline requirements, and so I just put those together. This is information that we'd gotten from the county earlier. I'm not going to belabor that point, but we've got about a year to go through this process, and probably it will move rather quickly and as we go expeditiously through your efforts. But we do have some milestone dates that we will certainly keep track of. One of my jobs as your facilitator, in addition to certainly your chair and your council, will be to keep you on task and make sure that we're hitting those milestones and identifying those points as we're going forward. As we were asked to put the proposal together, just give you a brief overview, we certainly reviewed your charter, we reviewed the charter amendment process, we certainly looked at what your charter is structuring and the roles and responsibilities of the county and the delineated efforts that you may be tapping into this year. We certainly looked through the RFP effort, and then we also spent some time reviewing the report that was created in your last effort back in 2016. So we've got a pretty good sense of what that process looked and felt like, although we don't know if it'll follow exactly that effort. It will take a life of its own as we're going forward, but we wanted to be aware that we did that background first. Not knowing what this first meeting was going to be, remember we submitted this proposal several months ago, we envisioned this first meeting would be exactly what you're going through now, having a chance to hear from your council, to understand the nature of the Florida Sunshine, Open Records Act, the process, the policies, the procedures, all those things. So we're kind of in this weird function where we're here today, but we're not officially on board, but hopefully we'll be with you here shortly, but we anticipated that would be the case. And then tonight, after we go further in the agenda, we would anticipate that you start to identify some potential topics and areas that you want to explore so we can start assisting you in identifying speakers and evaluation of what those topics might look like for you in subsequent meetings. We would think that subsequent meetings of this group will involve certainly the review and approval of your minutes, certainly public comment efforts. We're working with the county administrator's office for your website portal so that we can capture public thoughts and opinions and coordinate that type of activity with you. As we mentioned, your minutes will certainly be taken by your board secretary here. And then we would think that as we've started to identify those topics, that what we would do in concert with you, you may have certain speakers or people that you're aware of or individuals or counties that may be doing certain things. We're really your interface to that. So we'll reach out and make those contacts, coordinate those presenters and speakers, things of that nature, so that they're prepared for your subsequent meetings. So they'll be in and having a presentation, and we would envision topics and conversations that would take place. Just as a sidebar note, as we work with the county, if those speakers are non-SGR speakers and they've got cost or expenses to get here, that will be separate from our arrangement. We'll help coordinate the speakers to be prepared for those efforts, but those bills would be outside of anything that we would be doing separately. But we will certainly make sure that they're prepared and help coordinate that agenda for you as going forward. We would envision between meetings working with your chair or your vice chair as necessary, depending on availability, and certainly with the board council to make sure your agendas are prepared. So we'll basically have your business ready to go forward. That would be certainly part of our respective responsibilities. We also anticipate that since this is a year-long type process, we're going to have a variety of materials that come forward. There may be updates. There may be information that you want to push out. We're now working, as I say, with the county and the IT department on what that website would look like and what that would be, but we'll basically work with you to advance your cause and your messaging going forward so that people understand what you're doing, where you're doing it, how you're doing it, things of that nature. And that'll certainly be done in concert with the county staff to make sure agendas and minutes are all available on those sites as well. Some other efforts as we go through this point, and I'm not going to get into the details of this now. I know that your council identified there are certain processes and procedures as it relates to public hearings and steps. As you're working your way through that effort, we would envision that once you identify that, we'll help work obviously with your board council to develop language and proposals so that they're appropriate. We anticipate that there'll be one or more public hearings that will take place. and then ultimately leading towards a development of a report that we will also be drafting going forward as well. And so we'll be with you hand in hand as your staff support, in addition with your attorney to keep you on the path of straight and narrow and to make sure that you're completing the task and getting the documents in order for your activities. And then at the conclusion of that process, we would anticipate that there will be one or more efforts where this committee is making a recommendation to make changes to the charter, or at least to have consideration of your voters to do that. So we will be working hand in hand with you as a commission, but also with your legal counsel in what that looks and feels like, so that that report puts together the exact language and the programs, and we would envision, as I say, one or more hearings that would take place there. So that was all factored into our equation as well. And then at the conclusion of that event, in advance of the July 31st, 2024 deadline, we will actually end up generating the formal report similar to the report that you had seen from the 2016 activities as well. And that will, in essence, wrap up our responsibilities as the responsibility as your facilitator. Working with the county, we've submitted some not-to-exceed amounts. We've given some breakdowns. Basically, there's a variety of buckets in there, but basically what we said is recognizing if you're in the number of meetings and the number of anticipated coordination of speakers and things of that nature, we've budgeted those in various buckets. We think that we may have to move some things around if you decide you have more speakers or more meetings than otherwise necessary, but at least in our initial consultation with the county, we think that this represents a fair expense to be able to cover the so that nobody's got a surprise down the road at the end of the day as well. So with that, I stand for any questions. I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. In terms of the RFP, I just want to, and maybe the staff can address this, but was this agreement, was this considered by the county commission or was this administrative? Just want to clarify that just so we all know the process on the RFP since we weren't involved with it.
Oh, certainly, go ahead.
This agreement, or the RFP, was advertised by staff, and there were no respondents on the first advertisement, so it was re-advertised, and SGR was the sole respondent, and it has not gone before the BCC, but after tonight's session, if you choose to approve it, it will go through our Legistar process, and the BCC will have an opportunity to approve it.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Thomas? Commissioner Eggers, please.
So I looked at the budget item. What constitutes a half day and a full day?
We would anticipate anything that's less than an 8-hour meeting, a half-day session. So some of our retreats and our sessions are full 8-hour meetings, so we just book them they're either full days or increments of a half day.
So 8 hours is a full day?
8 hours a full day. Anything less than that would be considered a half day.
So 7.5 hours is just a half day. Wow. What a deal. I'm kidding.
Typically, they break out about 4 hours to 8 hours.
So do you envision anything else? I mean, we've got an attorney, we have a facilitator. Is there anything else from a budgetary standpoint that you envision that somebody that, like myself, doesn't have a clue what else might fall to us?
Sure, and I highlighted it there. It's also in the details of the proposal. To the extent that if you're asking for, let's say Heather, you wanted our strategic foresight person to come in and make a presentation on a given topic that maybe she would be presenting to the area, that would be covered under our cost as part of this agreement. However, if you're going to bring in someone from the National Civic League, just as an example, when they're flying in from somewhere else, that's outside. We would coordinate that person to make sure they're presenting on the appropriate topic and they're ready to go for the meeting. But those speakers, anything that would be a non-SGR speaker would be a cost that the county would be bearing for those individual costs, those individual outside non-SGR.
Right. And the only other question I had was that it comes to communication. I heard you say we're going to be working with staff. So I find out what we're doing tonight is not on our cable station. It's being streamed. So I didn't know that, so I asked my wife, is it on TV? And she says, no. I said, and she says it's being streamed on the county's YouTube site. And I said, well, how'd you know that? And so she said that she just looked online, went to our website, typed in meetings, and there it came up how you would attend this meeting. And I find that unacceptable. So I'm not quite sure how the word gets out. I think this should be televised. I think it should be streamed. And to the extent that we don't do it for some reason, when they pull up that station, it should say, CRC meeting is being streamed on. Now, and if it's doing all of that and I just missed it, my wife missed it, I apologize, but I have a, and I'm not, she said there's about 14 of us watching. So it's not like we have hundreds and thousands yet, but I still think it's important that we make ourselves accessible. So, I don't know.
I got to respond. We're obviously we've not been engaged yet, so we haven't started that effort. I do know, in working with the staff, they are in the process of setting up your website, your portal. I did look at that today. I know that there was an announcement of the meeting tonight that was on that portal, and there was also the appointment of the bios of all the individuals that are here. We would anticipate, as we do these types of work at other communities, we would typically anticipate that your county IT department would host that site, but we would be contributors to that, and that becomes the repository of information for information people may want to submit questions or information forward, the meeting dates, the links to your agendas for the meetings that would be streamed, things of that nature. So we would be coordinating that. The actual hosting of that service would be done by the county, not by SGR, though.
Okay, hosting it, and then any notifications on our Pinellas County's website would be.
We would certainly envision that, yeah.
It'd be on that front page that says, you know, here's where you go for information, here's where you go to watch it, et cetera. Okay.
Absolutely. If I can give you a sense, many times when I'm doing searches for high-profile police chiefs or city managers, city administrators, or county administrators, many times there'll be a separate portal that host city puts up, and we contribute and help manage that site for content and information. So I think that would be how the relationship would work here as well, Commissioner.
And then the discussion of potential topics that we're going to do on number 11, then that will be captured in our minutes and approved in minutes, but I certainly think it would be nice to rehash those, assuming we get this thing televised and people didn't get a chance to see it. So
certainly.
My comment. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I agree. I think that more transparency is obviously the goal. So obviously this is the first meeting. It's really more organizational. But as we go forward, it's going to be very important for us to be accessible and available and to be able to hear from people what their issues are, as opposed to just considering what our ideas are, what the best practices may be in the industry. So definitely look forward to facilitating a robust kind of community engagement in collaboration with county staff. And Commissioner Eggers, if you can get us on TV, that would be great. So
I just don't understand it. So.
Mr.
I'm sure there's a
Lowak
reason. I just, we'll find out. But.
Does county staff want to put any comment on just the engagement piece or the PCTV aspect, or we can get more information later? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Thank you, Chairman, and I neglected to introduce myself. I'm Nancy McKibben. I'm assistant to the county administrator. I represent unincorporated North County, but I am your staff liaison for the CRC Commission. And yes, in response to Commissioner Eggers, we do strive, for as much transparency as we can for the first meeting. We were under some organizational constraints, and we will definitely be working with our facilitator to leverage every opportunity we have to provide public access to all of the proceedings and information. And I'm very confident that we will have a very robust public engagement and access opportunity.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I saw Property Appraiser Twitty first, and then Commissioner Scott.
I just wanted to point out, I just Googled it real fast. I went to the Pinellas.gov site, put in CRC, immediately popped up the page, and it had the statement there that it was live streaming, and hit the link, and it took me right to the YouTube page. Correct.
That's all. And so if we're not going to televise, we can just have a little redirect. Maybe we did, but thank you for that. I think that's exactly what happened.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having just completed a CRC process, we didn't have a facilitator. Our facilitator, in fact, happened to have been the legal counsel. So my question in this space is, how did staff come to determining that a facilitator was needed for this process?
Ryan Lowak, County Administration. So we went back to the last Charter Review Commission, and they used a facilitator. Every time we've convened one of these types of bodies, we have had both legal counsel as well as a facilitator to do this. There's a long-standing body that will be here over the course of the next year, and this is best practice for these sorts of bodies when they are convened. So that's why we went ahead and went forward and took care of the upfront administrative procedure to get a facilitator here, and he made his presentation, and it is the CRC's desire to proceed forward with that.
I have a question. So with regard to the budget, is there a budgeted amount that this committee is obligated to stay within? Because theoretically, we could call for additional experts that would be billed at these rates, but obviously it could exceed the total amount. So where are the funds coming from, and is there there's got to be a limit, right?
Right. Staff, I don't want to misstate anything. I thought what I heard staff say when I asked about the RFP process is that if we select strategic government resources, that would then go through to the BOCC for their approval. And so I believe the funds would be coming directly from the county. I don't know that we don't have a specific budget for this commission. I know that Mr. Vose is going to have invoices. And in my experience on the redistricting committee, we reviewed and approved the invoices at every meeting. I don't know if that's what the process is going to be for this commission, but Mr. Lowak, if you could maybe shed some light on that, that would be helpful.
Same process, and they will submit the invoices. They will be provided in backup materials. You all will approve that. They'll be submitted to staff, and then they'll be paid through county purchasing, and those will come out of general funds. And back to the last point, the last question, I should have kind of the easiest way to say it is because we want to keep this independent. This is not a county-run body. We are here to provide staff support, but really the whole point of a facilitator having independent legal counsel is to keep this independent. This is an independent body and not a county body. Sorry.
And I think the agreement, Mr. Thomas, says that the pricing and expenditure cap is $121,550. Does that exclude reimbursables and expenses, or is that inclusive?
No, that's inclusive of what we've done. So let me back up a little bit. We actually we did submit initially. We knew there were a couple folks because we all submitted some questions for clarification. We did in fact submit initially. I don't think there was another submission or they extended the bid, and then we didn't, we just stood by. We were asked then by the county administrator's office if we could develop, because we had just basically outlined the cost of per meetings and those things identified. We were asked if we could amend our proposal to put a not to exceed and then factor in our assumptions to get to that point. So that's how we've got to the information you've got tonight. I was certainly led to believe that it was within their expected budget windows and things of that nature, but obviously that's the county's decision at the end of the day.
Okay. Other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion on agenda item 10. I'm sorry, 9, selection of a facilitator.
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Appreciate your willingness to serve and your response to the RFP. The next item is the meeting schedule. So I don't know if we have any backup on that or if we just need to start the discussion. For me, it might be helpful to put those key date timelines back on that were in Mr. Thomas's PowerPoint presentation. And I did just have a question, I think probably best for Mr. Vose. My understanding is our final report is due by July 31st of 2024, but the text of any potential referendum or referenda does not get developed until after that? Or
Oh, no.
No, okay.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah, no, development of your ballot questions and the charter language and so on, that's going to be going on through the process.
Okay.
Okay? That deadline there, that is the dead end of the process. After you've gotten to the point where you've developed all that and you've decided, yep, we're going to put some stuff on the ballot, so we're going to have a series of public hearings, and then we're going to adopt the final report.
Got it. So we'll be developing the text of the referenda, of any potential referenda, throughout the process, and
That's exactly
that
right.
text was anticipated to be available with the final report.
That's exactly right.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. So that's a lot of work. I mean, we have a year, but that's a lot. That's potentially a lot of work, depending on, you know, the areas that we're interested in and the public expresses interest in. So I don't know if anyone has any ideas on this. My thought is that, you know, Wednesdays, this is the third Wednesday of the month. This works well for me. It seems like we have almost everyone here. I don't know if the third Wednesday of the month as a kind of going forward is a good one that we should just lock up going forward for the, from now through July. Obviously, I assume that there will be months where we probably need to meet twice. Another consideration is if we want to have alternative locations of meetings that might make it easier for people in different areas of the county to attend. I know Botanical Gardens is where we met for the redistricting. That's more kind of mid-county. Obviously, St. Petersburg, we need to probably get down there at some point. But I also don't know logistically with county staff. You know, I don't want to be too burdensome on the staff either. So those are things we probably can address down the road as we get more concrete into the areas that we're looking at. My idea for now is let's lock up that third Wednesday at 6. And then we can maybe revisit it in December or January. I don't know that we can, I don't think we're going to be able to forecast every single meeting as we sit here tonight, but open to ideas.
Chairman, I wanted to introduce a thought for everybody, and just for your thought. I had the opportunity to look back in my calendar. I actually have on my calendar entries from all the way back in 15, 16 there, and it was initially the third Wednesday of every month that they started out with. By the time they got to January, they shifted to first and third Wednesday of every month, and then they were trucking on first and third Wednesday all through then 2016, okay? The additional thought I wanted to throw out to you is they held all their meetings, except their public hearings at the end. They held their meetings at 3:30 in the afternoon, okay? They found that to be, just offered to you, they found that to be very useful when it comes to avoiding traffic that you know, starts picking up at 4:30 all the way through 6 and what have you. Just a thought to throw out to folks. That's when they held all their meetings, was at 3:30.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Strickland.
Since you go all the way back to 2015, can you share where the meetings were held?
I can look up all those, yeah. And my recollection, don't recall having any in here. I may just not be remembering. Maybe this building wasn't used for that back then. We had a number of them at Botanical Gardens. We had a number of them in, I believe it was a utility building right up near the top. This was many years ago now. Does that ring a bell? Yeah. I could go back and get a complete log of all the locations that we'd had previously, but it was of interest to the CRC back then to have a number of meetings throughout the county geographically, in county facilities.
Commissioner?
Yeah, so how do we capture, if we have these other locations, how do we capture not only this work, the TV work, the streaming, whatever is going on, how do we capture that if we take, I mean, I appreciate the effort of trying to go on the road. I'm just wondering, how do we do it and capture all of this for those who are watching or from home? How do we have that ability? Just a question.
I don't know if county staff has a response
county
to that.
staff enterprise.
Yeah, and I don't know if Botanical Gardens may not be set up anymore for these types of meetings since the commission moved back.
Yeah, it's back to normal.
Right.
Commissioner Egger's point, that is one of the considerations that should be discussed when talking about meeting locations. We work with obviously our marketing and communications team. In our facilities, like we're in today, we have the ability to do this. Not all locations do. Typically, government buildings do. I looked in the last report, and I think the last few meetings were at City of St. Pete Chambers. So keep that in mind. If it's a government council building, they probably have a setup, but any other buildings, you'd want to communicate with staff to ensure that marketing communications has the ability to stream.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And what we also did observe from the last CRC session was that in the beginning, they only scheduled like the first 3 or 4 meetings. So it allowed everyone to get a feel for their schedules, and then they, progressively added on meetings, at iterative, sessions. So you might want to approach it that way, just maybe go to October or something and make it a little bit more manageable that way.
That sounds like a good idea. I saw Commissioner Posevich first.
So do anyone recall the duration of the meetings? Because obviously the number of meetings is one thing, but duration is also important. Are we talking 2-hour meetings? Because
Yeah, they varied, as you can imagine. My recollection, and I can go back through and take a look at the particulars, my recollection is somewhere between 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours.
Sounds good. Vice Chair Grove?
I'm just thinking, I love your idea of having it at 3 p.m. because we all would love to miss traffic. But my concern is making sure that it's during a time where the public can attend. Especially, we want to make sure it's televised, we want to make sure it's live streamed, but we also want to make sure that there's availability for public comment. And, after 6 or after 5 is usually a little bit better for folks at work, even though I know it's a pain to drive up here. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Does anybody else have thoughts on that? At least going forward for the first few meetings, Commissioner Scott?
Thank you. I can appreciate that comment, Lindsay. There are ways in which we might be able to balance this, where some of our meetings are earlier and some may be later in the afternoon. I think it's just important that we give consideration to everyone who sits at this body and the time that it takes to get here. If we're having 2-hour meetings and it's taken me an hour to get here, that's quite the challenge, I'd like to say, and I want to be as alert as possible upon arrival in these spaces. So giving considerations to even an earlier time, say 2 to 4, and then we have some in the evenings that will be after 5 o'clock, where we can address the needs of everybody who may potentially be interested in attending the meetings.
What is the feeling of just setting like the first 3 or 4 meetings tonight, and then evaluating how we're doing and giving the staff some time to look more prospectively down the road? And if that is the case, would we want to do maybe the first 4 meetings and say we'll do them at 6 o'clock here on Wednesday, third Wednesday, or do we want to? Is that agreeable to everyone? Or okay, everybody's
First
okay.
3 or 4, did you say?
3 or 4. What's the pleasure of the commission? 4 would take us to December.
And I think it would bump against the holiday in December, so.
And we could consider moving that meeting, when we get to the November meeting.
Okay. And for the record, I will not be available next month as I'll be traveling for work.
Okay. Yes, Ms. McGibbon?
So we're communicating with our staff from communications, and Aurelis has more of a handle on the actual schedule for this room. So I'm asking her to come up, please.
That's another note. For the next meeting, we'll get the staff microphones so you don't have to keep getting up and down.
Arelis Escalera with Communications Department. The clerk of courts is the one that manages this room, but we have Forward Pinellas, and we also have other meetings happening in this room
first and third Wednesday during the day. So that needs to be taken into consideration.
Those meetings are usually at 1 o'clock forward Pinellas?
They're usually over by 4.
Okay. So I'd say 6 o'clock is probably safe, and if there's a problem, we can maybe address it. But I think forward Pinellas is usually pretty efficient with that. Commissioner, are you?
No, I think the first 4 meetings at 6 o'clock is a good idea. Third Wednesday is a great idea, and we'll have a meeting next month, and we can change it. But I think if we get a little bit inconvenienced, it's okay. I'd rather the residents. We have all of our public hearings at 6 o'clock at night for a reason, so that people can participate, and I think that's very important. So.
Yes, sir. Can we just do this by consensus, or do we need a motion? Consensus is okay?
You can do it by consensus. Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have comments or concerns about the initial schedule? All right, let's move on to discussion of potential topics of interest. We have plenty of time, so do not feel like you need to get all of your thoughts out tonight. But if there are any of particular concern, and you want to let Mr. Thomas and Mr. Vose and the staff know of specific areas of interest, please go ahead and let us know. I did want to have a question. Is it the anticipation, and on other CRCs I've been on, the first few meetings you actually take us through the entire charter, and you show us this is what the charter says here, this is what, so that we get familiar with it. I'm sure we've all read it, but to hear it collectively from your perspectives is helpful. So is that kind of the goal for the first few meetings, is to go through the charter?
Yeah, so if that is what you all would like to do, and I ask this because in a number of the counties that I've represented their CRC in the past, they've wanted to go through, and let's go through article by article, section by section, and so on. More often, it tends to be subject matter focused, okay? Tends to be looking at, particular changes folks are already taking a look at. So I would welcome your feedback. That, as I recall, that is not what we did last time around. Of course, what they did last time around is not something you need to do. So we certainly could go through it. You will find, for all the uniqueness otherwise of a lot of parts of Pinellas' charter, there is a lot that is kind of standard or similar to a lot of other county charters throughout the state. So I'd welcome your feedback. I'd be glad to go through article by article if you all would like.
Commissioner Butler, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like the way you're thinking, first of all. I at some point, though, I have a question. So we talked about how the public has an opportunity to share with us their concerns, areas of concerns. I would much rather personally see us look at what, of course, our own interests, but then anything the public has to bring up instead of just spending a couple meetings reviewing the entire charter.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody else have thoughts on that? Okay, so topics of interest that you want to get out there now? Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, just a few. I don't want to go through, I've kind of tried to go through and make some notes here, but I certainly want term limits for county commissioners to be discussed. So that would be definitely one. Under the hiring and firing of the county administrator, it's pretty specific as to how many votes are required on the hiring process. But when you get to the county attorney, it doesn't get as specific. So I just want to take a look at that in the charter and see if that's something that we want to address. It talks about the ability of the county to have special referendum elections, and I just want to make sure that's the case still with what the state has done on referendums having to be certain years. Do special referendums, are they different, or are they handled the same as referendum? So that would be something that we can look into. Definition of commissioners district for at-large. So just as an example, it came up for the discussion on the representatives for the 3 at-large, and should they be from anywhere in the county, or should they have resided in the area where the commissioners lived? Even though those 3 commissioners represent the entire county, should they reside in that area or not? So those are just a couple of things that came to mind quickly. There's a few others, but I didn't want to get too far into it.
Thank you. And could I also just say form of government seems to be kind of maybe a very broad way to describe some of these things. So maybe just put that on the list comprehensively, I would say. Any other specific issues? Commissioner Overend?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This might seem like a general cleanup question for Mr. Vose, and I don't necessarily expect an answer today. But when there's reference to things that like might become irrelevant in the charter, is that the sort of thing that's necessary to go to referendum or referenda, or does that, you know, are we able to take that out some other way because it's no longer relevant? And Mr. Chair, I'd love to go back and forth a little bit with your permission.
Sure.
Mr. Vose.
Yeah, that's a great question because it's one of the legal distinctions between a municipal charter and a county charter. Municipal charter, there's actually ways under Chapter 166 where city council or city commission can do some minor surgery on their charter without things going to referendum. With a county charter, it's different. Any sort of language that's in there, even if it's language about something that's all, something that has happened in the past and has no further legal effect, that still has to be taken out by a charter amendment. Now, I've done that many times in county charters. It's effectively in the vernacular kind of a cleanup amendment. So if that is of interest to take out some pieces for matters that have long since already occurred, that's certainly something that can be done.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vose. I'll call out a specific section. It might seem like a large cleanup item, but again, just something to think about. Don't need an answer today. Section 5.0202 sub B. Sub A references, well, I'll just skip to B. It actually calls out special acts of the legislature, but it isn't a comprehensive list of special districts that reside within Pinellas County. So kind of a two-part question here. Is that redundant, first of all? And second of all, it appears to me it's not a comprehensive list. So why is our charter protecting certain special districts, not all of them? And if the charter doesn't have any jurisdiction over
What number was that,
special acts
Ashley?
of the legislature?
What number was that?
5.02 subsection B. If we have no jurisdiction in the charter over the legislature and special acts passed by the legislature, what is, might this be a cleanup item? And you know, we can collectively discuss that when we dig in, but I just wanted to specifically call that one out.
We can certainly discuss that. Let me give you we'll discuss this many times. Let me give you a very brief kind of history trivia about the Pinellas County Charter. Pinellas County Charter is one of the few charters in Florida that actually started as a special act, okay? So the original Pinellas County Charter was a product of the legislature, all right? That is how all municipal charters start, except for Miami-Dade County. We won't talk about them. But that is, in the other 66 counties, how all municipal charters start, as a special act from the legislature. But most county charters start through a different process that is locally initiated. So it's written by the county commission at the time, or by a charter commission pursuant to a particular statute. Pinellas is one of the few that was written by the legislature, so it's written differently. And so when it was written, they wrote in all manner of things like this to say, hey, you can't touch this. One of the reasons they put it, I would suggest to you they wrote it that way, is back when the Pinellas County Charter was first passed, the law was not clear whether or not a county charter could fool with these things. All right. The law has developed over the decades to be exactly as you say, that while county charters have a lot of power and authority, there are a number of things they can't encroach into. We might be able to look at a way to look at this as a cleanup amendment. I would not want anyone to get the impression, the public, the voters, or otherwise, that the legal effect of deleting this section would somehow empower the charter or the Board of County Commissioners to have some legal effect on these boards. So that's the delicate balance we might want to deal with. But that, as a historical matter, that's why that's there.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. And what stands out most about it to me is just that it's not a comprehensive list, so that kind of like raised the initial red flag. So I take your point, though. It seems like a big piece of cleanup, and sure, there would need to be some awareness, like public education on why that's happening, because obviously, even if that was a perception, that could not happen in the charter. So, so I just wanted to throw that specific example out there, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Other areas of interest that we want to put on the radar and right now?
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So the other side of the cleanup issue would be, in my mind, emerging issues, right? Things that aren't in there. And so a lot's happened in the last 7 years, both technology-wise and just in our, in our world. So I wonder if at some point it might be appropriate for a facilitator or for our attorney to say what other counties might be doing to add things into the charter that we may not have and should have. Don't know what they are, but figured if somebody else is doing it, maybe it would be worth considering. That's all I had.
Very good. Any other comments right now?
Mr. Chair, if I could ask
Yes,
a question.
sure.
Just for clarification, as we're starting to develop for your next meeting, then, it's unclear to me, is there a desire to provide some overview of the charter by the board attorney as a foundation, and then address some of these other, because we've obviously got to work on what that agenda looks like, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on where you want to start.
I mean, I think a brief overview of the charter and maybe the history of it, probably not to exceed half hour, 45 minutes, but not necessarily having to spend, a whole meeting on Section 5. Now we're going to do Section 6 next month. Like, I think that's what we're trying to avoid. Does that sum up well, everybody? Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make another point, maybe Mr. Vose could speak to. I like that idea, to have a general overview, but under the Sunshine Law, correct me if I'm wrong, we could shoot staff, the facilitator, an email, just a commissioner, to staff or the chair with a specific question leading up to or outside of any meeting. You could provide a response then. Would you be able to provide that question and response to the full board so that we can keep our work going outside of meetings, or is that considered? Because there's the whole do not reply all, to comply with the Sunshine Law. That does seem like a back and forth, but I just wanted to know what's possible outside of a meeting to
Sure,
keep
and
those
getting that going comprehensively would get a little involved at this point. Certainly what we can do as we're starting out, we can get it rolling further if there are additional, and actually this is a good point to directing my very general, very brief overview of kind of the structure of government and so on. If any CRC members have any particular questions after they're having looked over the charter that they want me to hit on, if they could send it to me, that would be fantastic, and I'll be sure to hit on it. We have to be delicate when it comes to individual members asking for some particular thing and then sharing it out to everybody and so on. That is certainly something that can be managed, but we can roll into how to get doing that in a good way.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, just maybe, the charter itself that we're covering is only a few pages.
12 pages.
Yeah. So maybe for the first 4 meetings, we could take a section of it just on our own, make sure you cover it on your own, and then come in here prepared to ask questions about it without having to go through every line of every paragraph of every, I mean, that way we know that this particular time we're going to talk about the first, 3 or 4 pages of it specific to questions that might come up. I don't know, just an idea.
Okay, good thoughts. Any other comments for direction on topics of interest? Okay, all good thoughts for sure. And again, feel free individually through your CRC emails to communicate with Mr. Vose and with staff and Mr. Thomas. Do not copy other commissioners on those emails. Obviously, they're all public record, but we should not be communicating with each other outside of the meetings on the business of the day. But these folks are available to all of you, not just to me or the vice chair. So I think that will help facilitate the conversation and individual interests and questions. Other business, I just wanted to ask, did everyone successfully get their CRC email set up? No, okay. Staff, if we can work with staff on making sure that that gets done, so that way everybody's on, on the same page in terms of the communications and everything is retained on the county server, that would be great.
Chairman, I wanted
Yes.
to mention one additional thing to the point of sending me emails or otherwise communicating. I also find that telephone calls are sometimes useful as well. Let me tell you what has worked out very well, pretty much uniformly in all my charter work around the state. And this is just to manage, billing for the county and all these great things as well. Found it very useful to be available to all the CRC members with my experience. If you want to call, pick my brain on particular things, talk about something, be a sounding board for it, send me an email to ask me questions, anything like this. But generally, assignments for big research projects, that would be hours and hours and hours of research and memos, tend to be the type of thing we'd come back here and the CRC would say, yeah, go ahead, Wade, and get going on that. If that makes sense to everybody, I think that's a good direction, but I found it to be very useful to be a resource to everybody to be able to give you insight of what I've seen around the state and so on.
Sounds good. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? We are adjourned. Thank you.